divisive as it may be among the fanbase, the fact of the matter is that Fire Emblem Heroes is one of the series' biggest success stories. Ever since its launch in 2017, it has earned Intelligent Systems way more money than any main series game ever did. And while player numbers are long past their peak, and as is the revenue Heroes generates, it still is one of Nintendo's most profitable mobile games. Not counting Pokemon, which is a separate thing, long story, different channel. And as always, with success comes influence. Even though there has only been 3 mainline Fire Emblem games released since Heroes, one being a remake even, I still think the effect of this mobile mammoth on the main series games has been apparent in various ways. So I figured, seeing as Heroes will probably never be more successful and influential as it has currently been, why not look back at how exactly this gacha game changed the core Fire Emblem experience. And because I suspect some of you will be a little hesitant to agree with me that Heroes has had any influence on the mainline titles, I want to begin with some factual influence. The way Heroes has altered, influenced and added abilities and skills to the Fire Emblem series. Fire Emblem Heroes has a ridiculous amount of skills. We're talking more than 3,000 different names, usually with actual different effects as well. Game isn't gonna power creep itself, you know. Many of these skills, especially those introduced early in the game's life, originate from the mainline games. Think Luna, Astra, Renewal, or abilities that are effective against certain weapon types. But the reverse has actually happened a ton as well, possibly way more than you ever realized. Close Counter is a Hero's original skill, but was brought over to Free Houses with the same effect. Quick Riposte also comes from Heroes, but has since appeared in both Free Houses and Engage, hell, it's even in Free Hopes. Same thing with Desperation, which is renamed to Alacrity for Engage. The many Defiant skills Free Houses has also come from Heroes, although those do work slightly differently now they're in a mainline game. Free Houses also has a lot of skills that may not originate from Heroes, but do take after the way they worked on mobile exclusively. Take Death Blow, which is originally from Fates. In that game it boosts the user's critical rate by 20, whereas in Heroes it boosts attack power instead. And what does it do in Free Houses? Yes, it boosts attack, not critical hit rate. Something similar happens with the several Seal skills. They're introduced in Fates, and in that game they lower one of your opponent's stats after combat, which slowly returns to normal over time. First Heroes and later Free Houses do not do this. Instead, the effect is simply one turn, no more, no less. These might feel like minor examples, and in the grand scheme of things they are, but at the same time they also show that the development teams of the mainline Fire Emblem games are watching Heroes and seeing what the game does right, in their opinion at least. They're not turning a blind eye and thinking it's some separate entity that does its own thing. No, it's a legit part of the Fire Emblem franchise. To some people it's their first or only introduction, and there are things that can be learned from the success of Heroes. By far the most prevalent example of this is Fire Emblem Engage, in some very obvious and some more theorized ways. Like, we don't have to beat around the bush. The whole way bond rings work and are obtained is without a shadow of a doubt inspired by Fire Emblem Heroes. It's essentially the main formula of Engage's little gacha cousin, implemented in a small, largely harmless way. And I don't think I need to point out that the inclusion of Emblem Veronica is the result of Heroes, that should go without saying. Now, randomly rolling for certain items isn't new or exclusive to Engage. Fates also had a lottery, for example. But the way you actually obtain PNGs of characters with certain skills even does feel like it alludes to Heroes in a pretty distinct way. At the same time though, I do not expect this to return in any future Fire Emblem games, at least until it's time for an anniversary party again. To clarify, I don't mean that randomly pulling useful items might not return. Again, it predates Heroes, I mean specifically the pulling characters aspect. But like I said, this is obvious stuff. Some of Heroes' influence is more speculative, even in Engage. Take for example what I guess you could best call banner bait. So, just a refresher in case you haven't really touched Heroes in a while, most often new units are released through banners, which are essentially themes. This allows IS to re-release characters that have been in the game for a very long time, now with different outfits and powers. After all, the 100th Edelgard still sells better than the first Roger, and these banners allow for popular characters to keep coming back. You have a yearly banner that is spring themed, Halloween themed or Christmas themed, and who can forget about the big moneymaker that is the summer banner. Other banners like Brave or Mythical or Legendary Heroes often use alternate costumes of characters, inspired or based on what they or their close ones wear in their original games. And in that light, I find it very interesting that Engage went for the decision to give every character a distinct battle and Somniel look. It essentially gave the game's units two sets of looks right out of the gate, which could have made for a ton of banner potential for Fire Emblem Heroes. It hasn't really happened yet. A big part of that is probably that Engage's characters didn't succeed in grabbing the audience's attention as much as Free Houses did, but it not coming to fruition doesn't mean it didn't possibly influence the design of Engage. Similarly, Engage also has a lot, and I mean a lot, of character moments that would qualify for the Fallen banners. These are banners that showcase characters having fallen under dark influences. Think Berkut when he's under Duma's control, or Dimitri when he's in full bore mode. It's another popular banner, but also one with an expiry date, because so far IS has been hesitant to give these to characters that are never actually controlled or evil in some way. The sole exceptions are Ike and Chrom, and while it may sound like that means there is no actual holdup there, the restraint is still very noticeable. And what's also noticeable is how many potential fallen units Engage introduces. We have two Allirs, Lomera and Vale as obvious options, Ivy and Hortensia both start on the wrong side of history, and don't forget the absolute goldmine that are Dark Emblems. These are literally the most popular Fire Emblem characters, now all ripe for Fallen alts. Hell, hadn't they done it before, even Ike and Chrom would now qualify for legit canon Fallen banners. Now, whether this truly was a consideration for the devs during the creation of Engage, we don't know and we will never know. But I do find it interesting, and an awfully convenient coincidence at the very least. Either way though, even if this little theory is correct, it might very well never come to fruition as planned, seeing as mentioned before, Engage hasn't stuck the landing they must have hoped for. I mean, Engage has now been a votable option for 2 Choose Your Legends popularity contests, and they have won a grand total of 0. That is really something. But speaking of the devil, we must also acknowledge the potential influence Choose Your Legends has had or will have on future Fire Emblem games. While I doubt IS will be closely monitoring the current state of this worldwide voting phenomenon, they too must know it doesn't really reflect the Fire Emblem fanbase as a whole anymore. The same cannot be said for earlier iterations, which received a lot more votes in general anyway. And we have actually on record that some results were a huge shock to the developers. In an interview with Nintendo Dream, a Japanese magazine, Kuai Maeda expressed that he and the rest of the team were immensely surprised at the popularity of Lyn, Ike and Awakening's version of Tiki as opposed to her Shadow Dragon incarnation. On the opposite end, they expected Marth to be a lot more popular than he actually is. And make no mistake, Maeda is a big figure at Intelligent Systems. He had his hands in all the scenario writing for the GBA and Tellius games, was a director of New Mystery of the Emblem, and is the person who came up with the idea to make marriage and pairing a big part of Awakening, which was a huge reason why the series even exists today. Point being, getting him to know we like Ike is a very good thing for potential remakes and inclusions in the future. Once again, we don't know exactly to what extent this has already influenced decisions on the mainline games, but I can definitely imagine it playing a role in the decision to make Lyn the emblem for Blazing Blade, for example. Similarly, Eliwood has never done well in Choose Your Legends, whereas Hector has, possibly influencing why Hector became a DLC emblem on his own. And then I haven't even mentioned the slew of characters from older Japan-exclusive games that managed to find an audience all because of how they were implemented in Heroes. We're talking redesigns, voice clips and updated looks that have worked absolute wonders for characters like Reinhardt, Lalina, Ishtar, Salif, Eira, Luwin, Sigurd and Deirdre. Especially those first two have been very noteworthy successes, to the point I would not be surprised at all if we saw their roles expanded in future remakes for Freyja and the Binding Blade. Hell, Reinhardt might even show up in that rumored genealogy of the Holy War remake. Who knows? But one thing is for certain. The effects of Fire Emblem Heroes' success will be felt for a while. If it isn't in design choices or character popularity, it will at the very least affect budgeting for Fire Emblem games for a while to go. Intelligent Systems has never made bank as much as they did with this game, and while not every penny of that cash will flow back into the main series, a good chunk of it definitely will and already has. How exactly is very hard to say, so I didn't want to dive too deep into the financial side of things. That Heroes has had an effect there as well is undeniable. What do you think of the influence of Heroes on the mainline games? Do you see it somewhere I didn't? And do you consider it to be a good thing? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.